Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and I'm beginning work on a group of reels that Tony sent in. Tony sent me about half of his collection of Shimano Sidestabs. This is the 2000 RB. There's an earlier one that has an adjuster drag on there. I believe that's just plain Shimano 2000 Sidestab. But regardless, we're going to show you how to take this reel apart. It's a rear drag reel, so we'll show you how the rear drag system is, all the pieces and parts. If you have one of these, you'll learn how to service it. And if you're interested in learning more about the Shimano reel, well, this is a good video for you. I'm going to start by removing the handle. And when I take the handle off, generally if it's a side screw like we saw here, I like to just put that side screw right back into the handle. That way I won't lose it. I also will put my pieces and parts, particularly the small ones, inside of a parts tray. That parts tray is nothing more than the bottom of a fast food container. Well, to get started on this one, we can remove the spool. Put that outside, you're not going to lose that one. And we're going to get the 3 side plate screws that hold this side plate onto the reel. Now, Tony tells me this is his favorite reel, and that he's got quite a collection of them, 15 or 20 or so. And he sent me about 8 of them to get started on. So we're going to do the video here so that if he wants to do these in the future, he can. And to anybody who has a Shimano rear drag fishing reel, well, this is very similar probably to the one that you have, even though it may not be the exact model. A lot of the times these variances within the manufacturer's brands have more to do with the gear ratio or the materials that they're using as opposed to the actual design of the reel. For example, this one is a 3-ball bearing reel. You may find one that's got a single ball bearing and it's got 2 bushings, where this one will have bearings. So this will be helpful to you if you have a different Shimano one, and particularly if they were made in that era. This one I believe was made around 1997. 3 side plate screws should enable me to remove the side plate case now and get a look inside in terms of what this reel is like. Oh, looks like we have to take the bottom adjuster off. So to take the bottom adjuster off, there's a screw on the bottom of the cup. Once you do that, you should be able to remove, by unscrewing in a counterclockwise manner, the piece, and now you should be able to get that off. There you go. So we have a bearing in both side plates. This is one of them. The reel is very clean inside, and we need to remove the pieces and parts, and we will take this drag off so that we can check it out and make sure that it's okay, as well as show you how to do it if you have a weak drag where you need to replace it. Next up then, we're going to remove the clip that holds that axle shaft in place. That is a double clip. There's one high and one low. And in order to get that clip out, you want to remove the screw first. It's a Phillips head screw. And you want to make sure that this assembly is on the bottom of the reel so that you can get that clip out and not have it interfered with by the main gear. Pull the clip up and out, and you can see what that clip looks like. The 2 sides C-clip. It's a good place to tell you to take pictures along the way. That way if you get confused on the reassembly, well, you'll have reference points to that. You can also go ahead and get a schematic. I did that for the purposes of this reel, for showing it to you. This is the schematic. They're available out on the internet. I think I may have got that one off of realschematic.com, not sure. But they are available, and you can get those to print out for your reference. All right, now you can remove the main gear. You'll see the secondary bearing behind there. And looks like Tony's taking pretty good care of these reels. They're just some old dirty grease in here. And that's part of the idea behind servicing a fishing reel. I recommend on an annual basis. And when you service the reel, you want to take the time to clean the reel, to inspect for damaged parts, and to re-oil, re-grease, and re-lube. And of course, if there's a damaged part there, you want to remove that as well. So I just took the Crosswind block off. Now I'm going to take the Crosswind gear out, and that's essentially the gear case. So we want to go ahead and clean these, and we want to inspect. I'm going to use a Q-tip to get the old grease out from behind the main gear. That grease back there has just been thrown off by centrifugal force. It has no value sitting behind the gear. So get that grease out of there. And you want to do that because if there was water that penetrated the case, then you certainly don't want to leave it exposed to the point where there might have collected some dirt or other things in that grease and where it's actually become an abrasive compound. All right, the old grease is out of there. We're going to check the teeth now. It appears to be an aluminum gear. Check all the teeth to make sure that they're uniform, not cracked or chipped, and check it on this way as well. Make sure that it's not warped, that all the teeth of this gear are nice and pointy. And that's good. We'll put that in there. We'll do the same thing with the oscillation gear. I'm going to check the teeth, make sure that there's none missing. Check it on the face as well as on the profile. That is good. And then the last one we want to do is we want to clean the grease off of the Crosswind block. So the Crosswind gear and block make the spool go up and down so that your line collects evenly as you reel in. All right, let's take the top off then. We got one more piece laying on my desk. Let's clean the old grease off of that. I guess it's probably time to place that paper towel. I use the paper products because I don't like to leave residual greases in that hanging around on my bench. Cons will tell you I got too much grease on my bench to begin with. He's probably right. And he's telling me it's time to replace my board. Well, maybe. All right. I used a 12mm socket for this. You can use an open-end wrench, and that'll give you the view into the inside. When you do this now, let's go ahead, do a little bit of maintenance on the rotor while we're at it. I like to just throw some oil, in this case I'm using a penetrating oil, into the seams where that's rotating and into that quick fire mechanism. That's just to loosen it up. If there's dirt or grease in there, you want to just make sure that it works fine. So go ahead and put that in. And when you're satisfied that it is, we'll come back and we'll put a little bit of lubrication on that a little bit later. Looks like there might be a little bit of dirt in that little trigger there. And then we'll oil. So we'll take our fishing reel oil, and only use fishing reel oils and greases on your reels. Don't go ahead and use household stuff. It's not as effective as the greases and oils made for fishing reels. You're going to see on this reel now that the anti-reverse dog is a single piece. It's kind of got a claw out here, and that's what's going to return your spool to the flip or trip position each time you do that. So we're going to remove that. If you get lost with this one, take a picture. Take a picture before you take the pieces and parts off. That picture will show you the orientation of this, and it'll help you when you go to reinstall. There's good things to note. You have an eccentric spring down here. It rides towards the back of the reel between that bigger post and that small post. I've seen these get installed backwards and off to the side, which has caused problems. So let's go ahead and do that. There's two sets of washers. There's one for the bearing and there's one for that little assembly with the eccentric. Note those as you take them off. And now we'll remove the bearing and the pinion gear to do the cleaning there. These two screws hold the bearing in. They've got a wider head, and they just catch the rim of the bearing so that the bearing can't pop out. Again, pictures are good. They'll be very helpful for you if you get stuck along the way. We should be able to remove the bearing assembly now. So we have a bearing and we have the pinion gear. And you can see we have an accumulated grease kind of where the gear stops, so we want to clean that up as well. Change out my paper towel. I'm going to use a hard brush. You can use a toothbrush, a dollar store brush. That's kind of what this is. Just get the old grease out of there. That's not doing any good. And just like we did with the others, check all the channels, make sure that they're even, make sure that the ridges on this pinion gear are even, and that you don't have anything stuck in there. I'm going to oil the bearing. I'm going to reinstall that bearing, and then we'll just go put it right back in. There were two sides on this bearing. There's kind of a shielded side and an open side. Just notice that when it came out with the metal part going up. All right, we're going to reseat that into the case. And this is where the parts tray is helpful. We took those two screws from the removal, put them right in there, and now we know where they belong on the way back in. So if you like these kinds of videos, I'd ask you to subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe, hit that notification button or bell. That'll let you know when I post. I try to post almost every day. You're essentially getting a look into my workshop, into the reels that I'm working on. And if it's not in my if it's not in my library, and you have a reel that you would like to see done, I'll try to work that in as soon as one comes in if I don't have one. And I do a lot of project previews from time to time to show you what's arrived in my shop. So if you want to see one of those that just came in, well, send me a note, leave it in the comments section. And again, I'll be happy to share those videos with you if I can. All right, I've just cleaned up the inside of the case. Going to oil that back bearing there. I'm going to use some fishing reel grease. I'm going to use Penn Precision reel grease to grease up that pinion gear. I like to get it in most of these. I don't like to overload, but I do like to make sure that it's there. All right, before I start loading all the other gears in this now, what I want to do is I want to come down here and check the drag system out. So we have a clip that's riding in the ridge of this, and it's a spring, so you have to be careful, but generally you can push this out by coming underneath. And sometimes it's easier than other times. If I grab a little, there you go. And this is a spring, that's why I'm working carefully with this. I don't want to lose that spring. Also good to note which direction it came out of. So it came out from the front side of this assembly, not the back. It's easy to put it in both ways. This way, this one has got an indent, so it's not as hard to miss as the other one. But sometimes you'll see that circle travels all the way around. With that out, this entire assembly will come out now. And this is your drag assembly. So you want to clean the interior of the assembly. I'll use a Q-tip for that. It's a good way to reach in there. And then here's your gear assembly. So that's a drag washer up top. And we have that little click mechanism. Then we have another drag washer. These all seem to be in good condition. Then we have a little rounded keyed washer. Then we have the spring. And then we have the push assembly below. So if you have yours apart and you're watching this video because you're trying to figure out which way they go, that's how they go. Okay, just load that back up. Spring goes on. Now that eared washer is going to nest in the slots inside here. There's two slots, so you have to make sure when you go to put that back in that those two slots and the washer nest in like that. You'll see again, there's a slot here and a slot there. The two tags on that washer go that way. Then we can take our push assembly in, and then we can come back with that spring, find the open groove. Be careful, it's a spring, it'll shoot. When you put tension on it, it will shoot. And there you go. That's the way that spring loads back. And that's the way it will go once we install the side plate. Let's go back in and finish the reel then. So we have the crosswind block is next. Again, we've checked this for the teeth, and the crosswind gear gets grease everywhere. It gets grease on the back because it'll be riding along the case. It gets grease on the teeth, which are going to intersect with the back end of the main gear. And it gets grease on the face because the crosswind block is going to ride on there. When you go to put that in, put it in with the stud side down. Remember what we said about that clip that we had to get on there? And the only way to get that clip on there is to keep it low, just like that. All right, we've cleaned the crosswind block. Crosswind block is a good place to take a picture because I've seen these installed upside down, and clearly that's not something you want to do. This is our crosswind block lined up like that. And then the next thing we would like to do, I think, is we'll go back up top and put this rotor piece back on. So remember when we removed all of this for cleaning, we had the two washers. One is the bearing shield, and the other. And we said with that offset on the eccentric spring here, that it belongs between the big piece and the little piece. So let's get that anchored in, just like that. And now I always like to make sure that I have this kind of right. You can put this on wrong through no fault of your own, but there's two places where this is going to stop. It'll either stop this way, which is correct for the quick fire, where you have your trip mechanism in line with the handle, or when you install it, it's going to wind up over here. If it winds up over here, don't panic. All you do is you lift it up off that pinion gear, rotate it to 180 degrees, and put it back. So let's see which way we go. All right, we have it set properly where when that anti-reverse engages, it's against the handle here. Let's go ahead and put the screw back on. And again, in this particular case, you can use either the open-end wrench or a socket. In a lot of cases, when you're working on these reels, you can't. Give it a spin, make sure that it's turning nice and smooth, which it is. Now we can go ahead and reinstall now. We took all that grease off of the main gear, got to put new grease back on. Let's go ahead and do that. Now, you don't have to get the grease in every slot on the teeth. They will spread the grease over time. If you overload too much, well, what happened to this reel when it was brought in? You saw a whole pile of grease on that inside shaft there, and that's what happens if you overload. It's just going to throw it off. A little bit of grease onto the stud that goes inside the bearing, seat that. Now we can come back up top and find our axle shaft. Light coat of grease onto the axle shaft. If you put too much on, it's just going to squeeze out as you put it into that pinion gear, so don't overload it. You got two things to do now. It's got to clear the crosswind block, and then you got to turn it so that it goes all the way in to that rear drag. Okay. Two sides to this. This is the upside with the little notch. If you weren't paying attention, go back and look at either the schematic or the pictures you've taken. And you need to just kind of work it so that you get it into the slots properly. And then once it's in the slots, fold it over and align the hole. And again, this is where that parts tray makes a nice difference because, well, you know where you're going with those parts. I'll grab the screw. And I'll get that screw in there. So a long time ago, a friend told me to be successful in wheel repair, the most important tool you need is patience. And that certainly has played out enough times, particularly with small screws, but we're back on track again. There you go. The small screw is in. I'm looking in my parts tray and I notice I have one more small screw in there, and that's the tie down for the rotor nut. So we can put that in now before we go too much further. There we go. Okay, now we can go ahead and put the front side case on. I'm not sure if I oiled that bearing already. It won't do any harm to put a little bit more oil on there. Make sure it fits easily. Don't try to jam anything in. If that side plate is not going on easily, stop, open it up again, take another look. Chances are something is out of alignment. I've seen wheels come into my shop that are warped, or the side plate is broken, or something else happened because somebody tried to force the issue with the side plate. Typically you've got something out of alignment if that's the case. And if it is, then please just be patient with it and don't force it and you'll be fine. Okay, one more down below here. And then we'll show you how to put that cap back on. We'll give it a test. And see how it's performing. It should do nicely. The reel was doing nicely before. I know Tony's taking care of the reels, so it's not as though this thing is a problem child that hasn't been worked on in years. So let's get this one done. Next up then is the cap on the bottom for this drag adjuster. Now a little nut goes underneath that screw. Said nut meant screw. That's all good. No drags in this. The drags are below, so you don't need to do anything with the spool. Come on in with the side now. We have the screw from the other side, which we had conveniently posted in. We'll tighten it up. We'll see how we did. Okay, just one more thing I like to do before I turn the reels back to my customers. I like to give it a quick clean. I'm going to use pen, rod, and reel cleaning for that on the kitchen scrubby pad. We'll just go over some of the parts that have some little accumulated dirt, like here. And just, it's a cleaner than a wax. It does a nice job, and not very hard to do at all, so why not do it? Again, if you're doing this on like an annual basis, which is what I recommend for services, well, it's a good time to take an extra minute or two and just clean it up to the best you can. All right, let's give it that test then. And while I do, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel, everybody involved in keeping us safe during the pandemic. Your efforts truly are appreciated. All right, that's got the off. Let's make sure we get these set. We do. We can flip. Of course, test that bail. We're good to go. All right, Tony, I only have 7 more of those that you gave me, and we'll get started on them right away. So to everybody who's watching, please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.